Greetings, salutations, whatever dumb intro Jake usually does. I guess I got to keep that thing going. This is Bailey and Wood presents Query and Schultz here on the ISC Sports Network. As you may have noticed now, 10 seconds into the show, this is not Jake Query. In fact, we have upgraded in the co-host chair, upgraded to Mike Wood, the Grand Poobah, president, founder, CEO. What's the actual title for you of Bailey and Wood Financial? Founder? Okay,
yeah,
cool. Founder.
Janitor.
I like Grand Poobah. Yeah, janitor. I mean,
Yeah,
sure,
whatever.
cleaning up messes, doing all of it.
Yeah.
It's great to have you here, man. I mean, we talk about you guys all the time here on the show and the golf outing and all that you do in the community, but it's great to have you here in the flesh.
I appreciate it. I hopefully can do Jake some respect here, not to tarnish his legacy here.
It's a very low bar. I can tell you that. It's a very low bar. We've got a lot to get to today, as we've usually done, kind of moving the show from Mondays to Tuesdays. We haven't really done a full Colts game recap because you feel like at this point it's kind of been done, right? So we call it sort of a Colts look back on their win over Carolina. I don't know how much of it that you ended up getting to see, but a 27-13 victory over a let's face it, a bad Panthers team. Kenny Moore with a pair of pick sixes, making some history as the first Colt to ever do that. But one of those games, Mike, where I think when you have a 17-game season, sometimes you have games, even that you win, and you say, I don't really know what to take from that. I'm glad they didn't lose, but I didn't know if there was anything like real concrete moving forward for the Colts to take from a performance like that, mostly because Carolina is a team that's going to be way, way out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think I got to see Carolina play Miami in person, and they're not a good football team. But I will say this, it's one of those things that NFL, I think every single week, anybody can beat anybody. Yeah. I think that's the draw to the NFL. And then Kenny Moore, he's amazing, though. I mean, that is the one huge bright spot, that it wasn't just the fact that he created 2 interceptions, is that he housed them. Yeah. And I think that was, something that I think the defense looked good. Not sure about Leonard. He still looks off to me. There was some of the highlights when he was going for tackles. The punching of the ball, which I know he creates fumbles, but he led to some missed tackles. It seems like he's just not back all the way yet. And then you've got the offense, which is obviously seems like it's sputtering. Yeah.
This is a kind of a weird analogy to make, but we're the kings of weird analogies on this show. But I don't get back home to Connecticut very often, but there was this burger place in Bridgeport called Merritt Canteen. And when I was a kid, you remember the taste and the old owner who has since passed away and the smells and everything like that. And then as the years pass, I'd go back there and I'd be like, yeah, it's still the same crap on the walls. You know what I mean? And it's still some of the same cooks, but it's just
not quite the same.
Not quite the same. And that's what it feels like with Shaq Leonard right now. Like, I'll still eat it. It's still good. I still want the milkshake. You know what I mean? But it's just not the elite level milkshake burger that it used to be.
Yeah, and again, it was just a couple times I've seen it, and they replayed it. I think maybe he's pressing. I don't know. I think he wants to be that guy. It just seems like there's more work to be done for him to feel comfortable or back in it.
Talking to some of those, and I know you've rubbed elbows with some Hall of Fame type players, the general consensus is that the hardest thing for them is realizing that their mind is still sharp and they think that they can do these things and their body's not cooperating anymore. I remember Reggie Wayne talking about that last season. We don't like to discuss it here in Indianapolis, but he spent part of camp with New England, right? And he just said, look, I was in mentally, but physically I just couldn't do it anymore. And you hope that's not the case with Leonard. He's still relatively young. He still should be in the prime of his career, but with those nerve injuries, back injuries, neck sort of things, it's not like breaking a bone or even tearing an ACL where you have a general idea of what the recovery is going to be like. In those cases, it's very, very tough to get back to what you used to be.
Yeah, and I think like in watching him, I think the one bright spot too is Zaire Franklin. He's a beast.
Yeah.
Like
they were missing on Sunday, of course.
So it's like, could you imagine if Leonard comes back to what he was alongside Franklin? That would be a dynamic duo.
And EJ Speed. It's a good linebacking core for sure. Offense really struggled. They didn't run the ball very well, just 2.6 yards per carry for Jonathan Taylor. Gardner Minshew continues to play like a backup quarterback. I get it with the hair and the mustache and all that stuff. We really wanted to kind of wave the pom-poms for Gardner Minshew, but you kind of realize in this league, and you've gone through it as a Dolphins fan, what a non-starting caliber quarterback looks like on a week-to-week basis.
I mean, it's the Fitzmagic, the Fitzpatrick. Yeah. It's always good for a few weeks. You get excited, and then you come back and you realize, there's a reason why he's been a journeyman backup. And I think that's where you're at with Minshew. And it stinks for Colt fans because no matter what, if AR's in there and Richardson's in there, at least he's getting the reps for the future.
Yeah.
And I think he's shown a lot of bright spots. And I think that, it may have been a struggle, but you would rather have the struggles with the young guy learning on the fly than the veteran. I think what you're getting out of Minshew is what you're going to get the rest of the season. Hopefully it gets a little better. We'll see. But it's just kind of who he is.
Yeah, you feel like you're gaining or building towards something if it was Richardson, even if he was struggling. And now, unfortunately, you don't get that, and it really kind of rips away the rest of the season. Patriots in Germany next. It's kind of sad what that game has become, isn't it? Like you were here, you remember, and even not being a Colts fan, I mean, you remember Colts Patriots, man, was
Manning,
huge.
Brady, I mean, just the legendary players on both sides of the football. And I've got to watch the Patriots up close this year, and that's also a really bad football team. And I think that I mean, it should be a win for the Colts. I mean, it should.
You'd hope.
You would hope, in the way that is, but yeah, it's how far that has fallen from what it once was.
If they're, and I'm going to say, you don't want to make broad proclamations halfway through the season. I'm going to make a broad proclamation. If the Colts don't beat New England and they're 4-6 going into the bye, with the way things are shaping up in the AFC, it's going to be very difficult for them to get back in the playoff picture. I mean, the AFC North looks crazy right now.
I mean, and I know they talked a lot about the AFC East preseason, about how all four teams, the Jets and the Patriots and that part, but AFC North.
Yeah,
I mean, it's insane, and you've got great defenses. Every one of those teams, they play playoff football, which I know you're going to get into later. But it's like they're physical, they're smash mouth, and for the Colts, I mean, I think you have to win the division to get in. I don't see a wild card coming out of the South.
It'll be tough.
It'd be really tough. So I think it's one of those. But you never know. I mean, the NFL, like I said, it's week to week, but. Yeah, I think it's a situation for the Colts, going forward. This is a win. I agree with you. I think this is a must win.
Yeah.
I think this is going to shape the rest of the season.
And the buzzword must win, but really, you feel good about yourself. If you're 500 going into the bye, you're kind of recalibrating, and this schedule's really light the rest of the way. So that could help.
Is that true? They had the easiest schedule? Is that?
I
saw.
I saw like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I saw second easiest. So if it's easiest now, it wouldn't surprise me because you've got the Saints out of the way and all of that. They've got some really bad teams kind of remaining up here. But when you look at the game in Germany, we're seeing this a lot now, where it feels like every week there's a 9:30 start, and if you're a fantasy football player, and I just got back into it, you get really frustrated because you're like, God, it's like 10:07 a.m. and I'm like, wait a minute, parts of my lineup are locked. What the hell? Do you like it? Have you traveled at all for Miami International?
I have.
Okay.
Actually, I went over a couple times when they played in London. Played the Raiders on my birthday.
They did the Giants. They did one of the early years.
Yeah,
I remember.
that was real bad. That was a 13-7 Giants win. I think that was bad. That was
sloppy game.
Yeah, that was in the heyday of the Dolphins having no quarterback. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a great experience. I don't like the number of games they're doing. Like, I think it's great. Like, hey, if you want to have 3 games and you want to do that. And I think the Bills are the perfect example. When I looked at them traveling, I feel like that derailed their season. Think about it. They smash Miami.
Yeah.
They're on a high. They go over there. They lose. The Jaguars beat them. They haven't been right since.
No, you're right. Yeah. It'd be interesting now that we have enough of a sample to kind of go back and look at how that has changed the trajectory of your season. I guess you have to not include Jacksonville because they play like 5 international games a year, right?
They are the home team. It seems like,
but for most of these teams, it'd be fascinating to see. I don't know, maybe somebody has already kind of dived into that. But New England's been a little bit more competitive lately, but still at 2-7. You hope that that's a team that you can beat. Indy currently 11th in the wild card race. 3-5-3 teams, as we mentioned. I think Pittsburgh's about the worst 5-3 team in NFL history, but still, they're 5-3.
Hands down, they're awful.
And then the Jets, who lost last night, are 4-5, and then the Bills 5-4, also in that mix there. So it's going to be a very crowded race. But I think some people, Mike, will say, well, what are you accomplishing by going 8-9 or 9-8 and missing the playoffs? And I get where those people are coming from, but with where the Colts have been the last couple of years, I think it would actually just be positive vibes for this group to actually not go in the tank, and do something where you're not going to be proud about an 8-9 season, but at least you won't be as down in the dumps as you were, let's say, last year or 4 years ago.
Yeah, I think the tank thing, and believe me, being a Dolphins fan, I know all about that. But I think it's about a quarter of a season, halfway through the season, people are already talking about the draft. You've got the Bears, you've got the Cardinals all lining up for that. So I think it's popular. I think Colt fans are thinking, the next Harrison Jr. They would do anything. But when you're building a culture and you're seeing a team take those baby steps, which is why the Richardson thing is such a downer for the Colts, because I think that if they were hovering around 500 with him in there, that would have been a major, major step. Plus, keep in mind, he just didn't play that many games in college, so I think the reps would have been really important for him. But you still have a lot. The Colts are one of the youngest teams. I think I was looking at something the other day that, they're in, I think, the bottom 5 as far as their average age of the player. So, I mean, it's still a team that has a lot of youth on its side to grow, and I think it's baby steps. You're a new coach, new system. I think you can, for me, I look at like McDaniel from year 1 to year 2, and Steichen. I think that the Colts can look at that like, hey, you're building that, you're getting used to a new system.
Yeah.
So I do think there's something there about building. I mean, the Lions are another great example. They finished the season strong. They didn't make the playoffs, but there was a lot to build upon, and then it's carried over to this year.
Yeah, you're right. The Lions are actually a great example, and one that I hadn't thought of sometimes it doesn't carry over, but I think in that case it definitely did, and you hope that Steichen, a gifted offensive mind, can put together what McDaniel's been able to put together there in Miami. Time for our Hoagies and Hops Hoagie and Hero of the Week. We usually do this in the first segment of the show, and it's brought to you by our friends at Hoagies and Hops. Sorry, I'm getting Peppadew Peppers on my laptop. 42nd and Boulevard on the southwestern edge of Midtown, and our friends in the adjacent Chili Water Tap Room. I did grab a beer for you.
Nice.
This is the Mama Tried, the dark Mexican lager, which we're going to try here in a little bit. And I have in my left hand the Shipyard. It is the tuna san, so house-made tuna salad, Peppadew peppers, as I mentioned, provolone, a little parm in there, which is nice, lettuce, tomato, and olive oil. And I hope this doesn't gross you out like it does for Jake, but I'm going to take a bite just to display it on the show.
That was a healthy bite.
Now just dig in. Just go for it. I brought paper towels somewhere. Now I don't even know where they are. Hoagiesandhots.com. Catering as well.
Yep.
You can check out their entire menu there. They have great platters for their catering. And I wanted to mention, I was in there, and this is a very dangerous place to be. It's stepping in the lion's den when you're at Hoagies and Hops during an Eagles game, but especially an Eagle-Cowboys game.
Yep.
So I was in there on Sunday night. I don't know if you saw any of that Eagles-Cowboys game.
Oh, yes.
It was berserko, right? Fans were going crazy. But I got to meet Roy Weaver, who is the author of this book about running against the grain. It's a story of a Philadelphia Eagle and movie star named Timmy Brown, who went to Ball State. And I have no recollection of, I guess I shouldn't say recollection, I wasn't alive when it was happening, but I never heard of this person. But he was a prominent figure both in pop culture and in the NFL, who is a Ball State grad and is credited for, loosely credited, I should say, because I don't know if you can solely credit one person for this, but the reason why the Cowboys and Eagles rivalry really took off was an incident involving him in the 1960s. So I'm not going to spoil the book or anything like that, but if you want to check this out, Roy Weaver, Timmy Brown, Running Against the Grain. Roy's a great guy, and got to talk with him a little bit about NFL history and all of that, in between people screaming at Hoagies and Hops, at Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott and everything else. But if you want to check that out, here's a plug for Running Against the Grain, the story of Philadelphia Eagle and movie star Timmy Brown. And we'll put some of the information, the QR code, probably up on the website, CoreyandSchultz.com, if you want to end up checking that out. But let's go ahead and get to the beer.
Now this I can do.
Yeah. Cheers. Oh, yeah, that's good. Yeah. And the dark can, I love the cans. The art can. This is a little more of a, not as much going on with this chili water can, but Mama Tried the Dark Mexican Lager. You can check that out, 42nd and Boulevard, and get any of their beers, not only just on tap, but also in cans to go at Chili Water Tap Room adjacent to Hoagies and Hops, 42nd and Boulevard. When Mike and I come back, we're going to talk more NFL. We'll talk about his Dolphins. Also, we're going to remember the great Bobby Knight, who passed away last week, and this is our first show, our first airing, I guess I should say, since the General passed away. Plenty to discuss. Stick around here on Bailey & Wood Presents Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
Nice snap. Mortgages and snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Hey, AC.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Welcome back. Bailey and Wood presents Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network, alongside Mike Wood, the founder of Bailey and Wood. I'm Derek Schultz. Let's talk about your company here, Mike, since you're the presenting sponsor of the show. 855-350-HOME, BAWFG.com for our friends at Bailey and Wood Financial Group. I've actually, maybe you have too, I've lost count how many Indiana branches, physical locations you have now. I think the number was 18.
There's 18 in Indiana.
Okay.
We've got one Michigan and one Florida.
Gotcha. Okay. So 20 total.
20 total.
18 in Indiana. But if you want to go to the website, BAWFG.com, 855-350-HOME, you get 5-star customer service, get pre-approved for your mortgage. Also, I'm guessing that you don't deal with as many refis as you were, let's say, 2-3 years ago right now?
No, not right now. But I will say there's light on the horizon. So
good.
Yes. So I do believe that will turn. We do there's a lot of cash out. We will do some refis right now. A lot of people maybe getting rid of high interest rate credit cards and so forth for that. So
and home improvements are always ongoing, right? So people do the cash out. So we did that with you guys for the cash out refinance and obviously the pre-approval for our mortgage when we bought our house back in almost 10 years ago, 2014. I was in Mike's office and he walked me through it. An idiot like me, so they can help idiots like you as well at BAWFG.com. Before we get back into the NFL, I mean, this is a huge story, and if it happened sooner than Wednesday, you know, it's been out there for a couple of days, we probably would have led with it, and I don't mean to disrespect those that were maybe expecting us to lead with Bob Knight, but we certainly wanted to use that as a prominent headline on the show. It's been a long time coming. He's been in declining health for a long time. In fact, Jake and I were told back in the spring that it could be any day. So the fact that he even held on this long is probably a testament to his fight and his personality. Mike, I know he's not for everybody. People are going to remember Bob Knight differently based on either their own personal experiences or their reactions to his behavior. There were a lot of prongs involved, a multi-pronged nature of Bob Knight's behavior. But on the court, I don't think anybody questions his basketball mind and acumen and the impact that he had on men's college basketball.
I can tell you a very quick short story about Bob Knight personally that impacted me. All my memories, anybody that grew up in Indiana, Bob Knight was a god. Mm-hmm. There's no other way of saying it. There was Jesus, there was the mayor, and there's Bob Knight. I mean, that's kind of maybe Bob Knight can even come first for some people. No. But I remember it would have been like 6th grade at an IU basketball camp, and my dad's shining moment in his life, I truly believe this, is I screwed up something really bad in this camp, and Bob Knight came over, and in sternly Bob Knight fashion, it was saying, and he accidentally spit on me.
Wow.
So he didn't mean to.
Yeah.
But I was so scared I could literally feel the spit running down my cheek. And I get there, and he comes over. And this camp, Bob Knight, we learned from him for 2 hours. And I think in those 2 hours with Bob Knight, I learned more about basketball than I did in 18 years of playing basketball. Yeah. But at the end of that, I remember my dad coming up to me, and he's like, "That is the greatest thing ever." And he told anybody ever, Bob Knight accidentally spit on my son when he's yelling at him because he screwed up. It was the first time my dad was ever happy that I screwed anything up. Yeah. But it was one of those things that at the end of that, we stood in, and he stood there. And I'll never forget, there was probably 100 and something kids, and no one left without him taking a picture, shaking a hand, and him talking to you. And it was, for me personally, it was one of those moments that, it kind of, it hits home still today. Like, yeah. I mean, the guy was so far above above everyone else, I felt like, of just teaching something he was passionate about. I like to focus on the good for people. I mean, there was negatives in that portion of it, but people forget what he did with the library. There's so many, and the coolest part about everything that's coming out is the stories and hearing people of that. Hey, Dickie V shared a great story about Bob Knight, taking care of people, not wanting it to be aired, and that's the kind of stuff I like hearing about. I choose to remember my Bob Knight that way.
Sure. And you can choose to remember him however you like, especially in the wake of somebody's passing. I think there'll be times to kind of talk about their legacy and the good and the bad. Jake and I had several interactions with him on the show. In fact, the first week on the show, he was on the show. He was doing a book signing or something. And at the very end, we had him on for about 25 minutes. And at the very end of the interview, Jake was into his final question, and he said something about how, I used to be critical of you in the past. And Bob just jumped right in and said, well, critical of me in the past. What are you talking about? You don't know me. You don't know anything about me, and hung up. And I was like giddy, you know what I mean? Because I was like, yes, he's being Bob Knight. He's doing his thing. This is great radio. And then got to meet him a handful of other times. But one story that sticks with me actually has nothing to do with me per se. It wasn't a direct thing that happened with me and Bob Knight, but living in Bloomington and being an IU student, my freshman year was the year after he was fired. So I was there for the entire Mike Davis era. And we lived over at 19th and Lincoln across from Memorial Stadium and Assembly Hall. It was a 5-minute walk to the front doors of Assembly Hall from the 7-bedroom house I lived in with 6 other guys. And across the street from us, I always felt terrible because there was this little ranch house, probably a 2-bedroom, 1,000-square-foot ranch house, with this immaculate lawn and all of these little kitschy, old lady type lawn ornaments and things like that, and a little bench. And there was a little old lady that lived across the street from us, and I always felt bad about blaring Dr. Dre's Chronic 2000, you know what I mean, and doing all of that because we knew that there was this little old lady over there. But we lived in that house for 3 years, and at the end of the 3 years, we were moving out, and we were in the yard. We were in the front yard, and there was a party going on or whatever else, and I had my graduation thing on because I was about to leave, and she came over and said, oh, hey, happy graduation. We're going to be sorry to see you go or whatever else. And she kind of hung out with us for the rest of the afternoon. And she started telling stories about how for Sunday night dinner, Coach Knight would come over to the house. I guess he was friends with her late husband. And
oh, wow.
He would just hang out at the house and walk over from Assembly Hall after practice and things like that. And that's the stuff that you never really heard about. You heard about all the stuff that made headlines.
Right.
And you didn't hear about the other stuff. But, I agree with some that say that I don't think he was a complicated man. I think Bob Knight was exactly who he was. I think how he's remembered is going to be complicated because people have such strong feelings kind of one way or the other about who he was.
I think the first time we met, it was on my agenda, and I still believe that it's time. And I want IU. I mean, you went to IU, so you can speak on this more. But I want to see the statue. I want to see his name on the court. No matter what, I want to see that. I don't want to see him throwing a chair on the statue, but I want to see it celebrated because I think there's a huge portion of Indiana, and probably the older generation, that was there, but it's the final piece of the healing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That I feel like needs to take place.
Yeah, the court's going to stay Branch McCracken Court, right? You're
Yeah.
not going to take off the name of another legendary court. I get what people saying there. And he does have it's the full team, right? 1976,
Yeah.
him and Buckner and the rest of the group kind of holding up the trophy. I do think that 2020, his return in 2020 to me, at least opened the door for that happening. Because I think there was this, and I had kind of accepted that this was going to be the case, that there's this alternate history where Bob Knight never comes back to IU, and we're where we are today. He's in the ground, and that closure never happened. So even though I think there were some questions if he was all of sound mind that afternoon in January or early February of 20, whenever it was right before COVID, if you remember that he went there, and IU of course lost that game because it was Archie Miller. And how do you not get up for Bob Knight being in the building? Come on, man.
And the emotion that he showed, I think. That's the only thing because I did hear a lot about his mindset, but if you go back and watch that, and I know a lot of people were sharing it, the raw emotion that he showed, you could tell for Bob Knight, that's about as emotional and as sappy as he's probably going to get.
Yeah.
But you could tell it hit him.
No, it did. There was something about, I don't know, there was something about just seeing him there with something that said Indiana on it.
Oh, for sure. The red sweater vest
was neat. And this is coming from somebody that, look, full disclosure, given my employer and everything else right now, I've pretty much abandoned my former emotional connections with Indiana, but seeing that and growing up a Bob Knight sycophant and a huge IU basketball fan, it touched me emotionally, as I'm sure it did a lot of other people to kind of see that return. So it was something that I didn't think I needed. I didn't think I needed Bob Knight to come back to Bloomington, but then it happened, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is cool. This is special. I'm going to remember this.
I don't think there was a dry eye in Indiana that night.
Yeah.
Anybody that had any emotional, and I even think Purdue fans going back to Acadian night. I mean, those are some of the most cherished memories across the state. So I think it was something everybody needed, regardless if they knew they needed it or not.
And it's just one of those things where, we're in a space right now where we're having to evaluate a lot of sports legends who have some thorny things that you have to talk about that aren't kind of clearly defined in black and white, like Kobe Bryant or Jim Brown. Hell, if you go back a couple of years, I guess it's been almost 10 years now, Joe Paterno. And that's just kind of where we are. I mean, it's sort of like when you and I die, it'll be the same thing. Like, I like to think that I'm this great person who's been this perfect guy. I haven't been. I've done stupid stuff. I got my, I had earrings and a tongue ring and have been arrested and things like that. So I think everybody has skeletons in the closet, and Bob certainly did, but he also did a lot of special things. So he'll be remembered for that here in the state of Indiana. I think most of the memories have been positive ones, at least the ones that I've seen. Let's go around the rest of the NFL. Let's look at your Dolphins. 6-3. I don't think anybody questions that they're a playoff contender, but something to be said maybe that they've lost or fallen short in their 3 biggest games so far this year. None of them at home, but still.
I think that the homer part of me looks at it from the outside of standpoint. Yeah, none of them were home games. They lost to 3 quality opponents in Buffalo, the Eagles, and obviously this past weekend to the Chiefs. They're finally healthy. Getting Jalen Ramsey back. I mean, the crazy part to me is the Chiefs game. You look at that. They held the Chiefs to the lowest yardage output they've had in 10 years.
Yeah.
And, I think there's some bright spots, but no matter how big of a fan you are of Miami or whatever, you have to look at the end. Tua had 2 shots at the end, and they're mistaken communication or underthrow, whatever you want to call the one in the corner that the guy's wide open, could have tied the game, and then the fumbled snap, regardless, it hits your hands, you got to catch it. And there was an open, waddle right. So they're falling short on that, and I think again, kind of similar to the Colts. I think you got to learn. Miami hasn't had a winning culture for a long time,
right.
So I think there's a lot of stuff that you have to believe that, and it's going to take them beating some of a quality opponent. My counter argument to that would be, who have the Eagles beat? Who have the Bills beat? Who have the Chiefs beat? To give you an idea, like looking at it, the Eagles have won against the Pats, the Vikings, the Bucks. They beat the Commanders twice, the Rams. Mm-hmm. They squeaked out against the Cowboys, who some are now calling Miami and the Cowboys to get neither one of them can win a big game. That there's all those coming there, and they beat Miami. Well, if Miami's overrated and they're frauds, well then you don't get credit for that on the same hand either.
True.
So, and then you look at the Chiefs. I mean, you've got the Bears, Jets, Vikings, Chargers, Fins.
Yeah, not a lot of good teams.
So
yeah.
I mean, I think
West is down.
I think there's a lot of teams that are similar. The difference of it is they get the benefit of the doubt because they've won in the past.
Yeah,
to me, the Ravens are the team that has the most impressive resume. I mean, they've beat some quality opponents and handled them. I think that when you take the Seahawks, the Lions, and the Browns, which are 3 solid teams, they beat them 103-9.
Wow.
When you combine those scores, so it's to me they're the team that, even despite every team, I don't think, or every team's got their problems, I would say, or I don't feel like there's a dominant team. No. Even the Eagles, I think they can be had. I think the Cowboys had them right there. I think that portion of it. But going back to the Miami piece, I think their schedule at the beginning, they had the second hardest schedule, and now everybody's like, hey, look at this, because in the NFL again, it's week to week.
It changes. Yeah.
So the Kansas City has played Denver twice. They squeaked out a win, and then they got demolished by them. Mm-hmm. The same Denver team that Miami scored 70 points on and beat by 50. So I think it's and the Colts beat the Ravens. So we just sit here and talk about it
with Gardner Minshew. Yeah.
So I think that it's crazy. I think why ultimately the NFL is so popular is anything can happen week to week.
Yeah.
Except if you're a Panthers fan or one of those. I mean, you're thinking next year.
And that's something else that I think now that we're halfway through the season, we've seen, I think, a true bottom establish itself.
Yeah.
So we don't still quite know who some of the, there's some teams in the middle. Like, are the Chargers good? Like, I guess
they should be, right?
Yeah, but we know who's bad. The Giants, the Patriots, the Panthers, Arizona's really bad. The Bears,
yes,
like those are teams that are at least kind of showing themselves. One other thing that it's weird to say this is sneaky because this guy's been one of the biggest stars of the last couple of years, but after that 1-3 start, Bengals have ripped off 4 straight and have looked really good, have looked like the team that people expected them to be.
The thing about them I think is the most impressive is they physically beat up Buffalo. It's the physicality of the Bengals, I think, was impressive. And, you remember last year when they went on the road in Buffalo in the snowy and had the Bills fans who I think – now, keep in mind, it's a Dolphins fan saying this. The Bills fans have the most excuses of any fan base I've ever seen. It's either the sun's too hot in Miami, it's snowing in Buffalo. You're from Buffalo. I mean, you're griping and you're playing the Bengals, and they come up and just smashed them. The Bengals, to me, when that whole division, going back to AFC North, I mean, that is a physical hit you in the mouth, which that usually travels well come playoff time.
No, you're right about that. And I don't think I'm letting anybody know or stepping out on a limb here by saying, hey, watch out for the Bengals. But yeah, watch out for them. Really watch out for anybody in the AFC North. But I'm not going to write off Buffalo or any of these other teams.
You got Josh Allen. You always got a shot. I mean he's pretty darn
good. I think the biggest difference to me of kind of where we are now compared to where we were 12, 15 years ago is that you don't have to – all of these games are like 21-17 now. I know, you have some outliers with the Dolphins, right, 70-20 and things like that. But for the most part, when you played peak Drew Brees and the Saints, when you played peak Peyton Manning and the Colts, peak Tom Brady and the Patriots, you had to score 30 to even have a chance probably to win that game in most cases. And now there's just not – I mean, the Colts would roll out of bed every week and win. And when they would lose, it was shocking. Or you'd have like Manning throw 6 interceptions or Vinatieri miss a 23-yard field goal or stupid, crazy stuff. And now it feels like the Chiefs are life and death with every team that they play. And they've still got the best player in the world at quarterback.
I think that the margin has, I think when you talk about everybody wants to put elite, right? Elite teams or who's elite teams. I think, and it's same with the quarterbacks. I mean, you've got a couple that are obviously head and shoulders above.
Special. Yeah.
But and I think people automatically jump it to where like, hey, if you're in that second tier, like I put the Dolphins in the second tier because they haven't proven they belong in the first tier.
Fair.
But that still puts you in the top 5-6 teams of football, in my opinion. And I just when you look across the teams, there's nobody that I feel like couldn't beat someone else. Like I could make the argument if the Chiefs were in Miami wins that game. Miami's the best home team in the National Football League over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
They haven't lost at all at home. People going, which is why I think that game last week was so much more important to Miami than it was Kansas City. Because Mahomes can win anywhere. He's proven that.
Yeah,
he's won
right.
Super Bowls. The Dolphins haven't proven that except for when they're at home in the heat. The idea of a more finesse, offensive like that, traveling to Buffalo, Kansas City, is a lot. Your odds are a lot better if they're in Jacksonville or Miami.
You just feel better about the kind of the tried and true formula that some of these teams have put together. But again, it's how much of that is perception and how much of that is reality. Who the Dolphins were 10 years ago, does that matter to who the Dolphins are now? We have it in the back of our minds,
right.
Though. It's hard to erase that. It's a lot like what, to a lesser point, Purdue basketball is going to go through this year.
Right.
Where Purdue can run through the Big Ten and be 32-4 at the end of the year, and everybody's going to be like, that first game, they're playing, Christian Montana State Tech College, and you're going to be nervous. You're going to be anxious about, oh my God, what's about to happen here? So I totally get it's sports fandom, right?
Absolutely.
It's sports fandom. That's just kind of where you are with it. Let's talk about our Love That Play. It's brought to you by our friends at Love Heating and Cooling, 353-2141, love-hvac.com. Thanks to Chris, John Love, and the rest of their talented crew for always supporting this show. And if you need your furnace serviced, if you had some problems with your AC, I know you're not going to be running your AC very much here for the next couple of months, but still might want to nip that in the bud before the winter months. Give our friends at Love Heating and Cooling a call, 353-2141, love-hvac.com. I don't know if you saw, I'm sure you heard about this because it was one of the big headlines of the weekend, but man, CJ Stroud, 6-play, 75-yard touchdown drive with no timeouts in 40 seconds, 470 yards and 5 touchdowns. He's had an incredible year. And I felt, and this is not to me to be like, yes, Derek Schultz, sports expert. I felt like he was the best one of this class, and we have the receipts. Vince, you have that tape. You can go ahead. Yep, see, thumbs up. Vince can back that up for me. I did feel fairly strongly that Stroud was going to be the best quarterback of this group, but what he's doing so far and hitting the ground running, I mean, there hasn't been much of a learning curve for him at all. And a Texans roster that really, Mike, you know that team, they're not very good. They don't have a ton of talent over there.
No, and I'll be honest with you, if you got the receipts on that, I've got all the receipts. I was the opposite.
Really? Okay.
But I kind of fell into what you were talking about earlier, the Ohio State quarterback thing. That was in my head, and I was like, I looked at him, and I thought, Bryce Young. I think Anthony Richardson is still the best physical athlete of all of them.
I think he has a high ceiling.
I think absolutely. I think there's something there. And I always thought, when you look at the young quarterbacks, not to go away from CJ real quick, but when I thought you would look at the young quarterbacks, you couldn't really develop accuracy or whatever. But I remember Josh Allen, how putrid he was,
he was awful,
in the first two. And I compare a lot of Anthony Richardson, maybe his accuracy of developing. And if he can develop with Josh Allen, the Colts got something special. But the C.J. Stroud, I mean, there's nothing else to say except for, boy, was I wrong. I did watch a lot of that game. I was watching it on my phone during basketball, my daughter's basketball game, so I was getting in trouble there a little bit. But I couldn't. Watching the end of that was just amazing. A rookie, right down the field, and I know he had lit up the Buccaneers all day. But then, he's throwing a guy like Tank Dell. I mean. He's okay. He's
right?
okay, but you're sitting there thinking,
cares?
okay, he's doing it with minimalized weapons. I mean, it's not like he's got this great supporting cast, which makes, I think it was like that's rookie records if I remember right. Like,
it is.
That's unbelievable what he did.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible the season that he's having, and he's really flashed here. Richardson, even in short samples, has flashed, and that's kind of where I worry about Bryce Young. We're halfway through his rookie year. I think you'd be crazy and that roster stinks.
Yeah.
You'd be crazy to write off Bryce Young right now. But one thing that concerns me a little bit is that I have yet to kind of see not that I've watched every second of the Panthers, but I've yet to see a highlight or anything like that where I'm like, wow. Yep. He hasn't really had that moment yet, whereas Stroud's already done it. Stroud's doing it every week, and Richardson did it several times in 2.5 games.
Absolutely. And I think that the highlight or that the wow plays, the factors in watching it, I think out of all those teams, I mean, the Texans don't have a running game. Like, I believe because I've got the running backs on my awful fantasy team. So so every argument that you could make, well, Bryce Young is behind an offensive line that's crap, which we know that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the strongest supporting cast. That's also true. But neither does C.J. Stroud. No. So it's like, and I agree with you 100%. It's like when I look at that and the numbers that he's putting up, and he's doing it without turning the ball over. I think that's the most impressive part. When you look at how many games he's not turning the ball over, there's no fumbles, he's not throwing interceptions. It's just truly amazing. A young quarterback. I mean, we remember Peyton. Right, Peyton led the NFL in interceptions his rookie year, and I think he did okay for his career.
Yeah, he did all right.
Yeah, he did all right. Yeah. But I mean, you look at C.J. Stroud; he's not turning the ball over, and then still producing that. It's truly special.
Yeah, it's all these quarterbacks, man. And you've been through it as a Miami fan. People always find like the one negative thing, and that becomes the thing. Like for Stroud, it was like an aptitude test, right? Where everybody talked about that. For Young, it was his size. For Richardson, it was his completion percentage at Florida, and if you want to hyper focus on that one thing and say this guy is this, sometimes you're going to be right, but sometimes you're going to be really, really wrong. And the one thing that I sit here and said I was right about Bryce Young. It's so hard; it's a guessing game, right? But the one thing that I felt really confident about this group, and I'll even throw Levis in here too, who's been okay, I guess, in a limited sample. I just have I had the feeling all along that one guy was going to really hit and one guy was going to be awful. Total like Zach Wilson.
Oh,
yeah. One guy was going to be Lawrence. One guy was going to be Wilson, and I'm just fascinated to see if it ends up being Bryce Young as the Zach. If Bryce Young ends up being like the third or fourth best quarterback in this draft, if he ends up being Trubisky, I'll be fascinated.
Well, and not only that, but then when you do that, how bad does that set your franchise back?
Yeah,
because all you can think about.
Look at the Bears.
I mean, and
the Bears from that,
and the Bears right now are set up.
Yeah,
like if you think about it, they got Carolina's pick. Right now, they get the top 2 of the top 3 picks.
They do, yeah.
Now, granted, they got a GM that just likes to throw away picks and make horrible decisions. It's kind of like the Monte Sweat. That you go and you get this great defensive tackle and you break the bank, but you could have signed him for no draft capital.
Yeah,
I don't understand it. You're not going anywhere this year. I just don't, unless you thought he wouldn't choose you. But I think NFL players have shown they're going to choose the money. But yeah, that's a tough. And I got a good friend that's a huge Panthers fan, and I feel for him because you don't have a first round pick, so you have nothing. You have to have Bryce, and then they've got the old ball coach down there. So it's like, I think Colt fans enjoyed the win against Mr. Frank a little bit.
Which people that watch this show know I am fully a Frank Reich apologist. I guess I don't get why fans got so angry with him. Like, Frank Reich deserved his fate. I think he lost control of the team. I think the Colts lost control of their franchise for a while there for last season. But I don't think, like, Josh McDaniels was an actively horrible head coach. In Miami, you've had a couple of those.
We've had more than a couple.
that have come through there. Like, Frank Reich was not a bad head coach. He just was a coach that wasn't up to snuff. He wasn't up to the level that they needed. And that, I don't know. I don't think that that's an opinion. I think that's fact-based. I think that to squeeze a couple of top 10 offenses out of, Phillip Rivers, who was 48 years old at that point, and Carson Wentz, whose career has never recovered, I actually thought Reich did a lot of good things. There were some bad. There were certainly some valid criticisms, but I did hear that in some Colts circles, like, I'm so happy to see that look on smug Frank Reich's face. And I'm like, man, I want to give Frank Reich. Frank Reich seems like a cool dad. Like, I'd have a beer with Frank Reich.
Yeah, I think the Colts' problems are more in the upper boxes than I do on the field, if you want my honest opinion. I think that's a whole nother thing. But I understand what you're saying with the Frank. I think it's more of a GM thing than it was Frank, in my opinion.
I think last year just snowballed, and then it became an avalanche, really. And that happens, even to franchises that are normally good and competent, like the Colts. And they just, I think everybody, I think even Irsay would say that he lost control about. And let's not even talk about last year. Let's talk about happy stuff. We'll talk about happy stuff. We'll continue to do that next. You want to talk Pacers?
Sure, man.
Cool. We'll do that when we come back. Stick around. It's Mike Wood. I'm Derek Schultz. It's Query and Schultz, presented by Bailey & Wood Financial Group here on the ISC Sports Network.
IUPUI basketball is back. Come witness history with head coach Matt Crenshaw inside Indiana Farmers Coliseum and head coach Kate Bruce inside the Jungle as they usher in a new era of Jaguars athletics. Be there for exciting Horizon League and in-state matchups. Affordable fun for the whole family. Full season tickets are now on sale starting as low as $80. Order today at IUPUIJags.com/tickets or call 317-278-2530. Work hard, make noise, have fun. Go Jags.
At Bailey & Wood, we pride ourselves on our 5-star customer service. But at our core, we're a family. Family owned, and family to our customers, staff, and our community. From charity events to recognizing hometown heroes, we prioritize giving back to our communities that have always supported our growth. So let us help you get your dream home today.
Rolling right along here. It's Query and Schultz, episode 160. Can't believe it's been 160 of these.
Congratulations,
Sports Network. Yeah, I mean, if you go back to the radio days, it's like episode 11,100 or whatever it is. But yeah, it's.
Well, it's more you and you. I was talking about you and Jake, cohesive.
Oh, yeah,
not killing each other. Him killing you, really.
Amazingly. Yeah. I mean, hell, you know me. You remember the old show, and Rakestraw's not here to vouch for its existence, but there was an old show on the old ESPN 950.
Oh, yeah.
The Zone, and we did when I was a solo host of that show, 2009, 10, around there, we did a show from your first office there, your flagship Bailey & Wood office in that little strip on 31 in Whiteland. Now it's become this huge deal, and helicopter pads and entertainment centers and media centers and all of that.
Yeah, some of that maybe.
It's impressive, man. I mean, I think I've told you this privately before, but I can even say it on the show. It's really neat to see. I didn't necessarily see the origin story, but I saw the early days, and to see Bailey & Wood grow into what it's become. And your daughter and family now taking an active role in the success of the business. I mean, as a dad and as a businessman, I mean, this has to surpass even your wildest dreams for what this was going to be, right?
For sure. I mean, getting bossed around by your daughter is weird sometimes, but it's okay. It's all right.
She's good at what she does. She brought us the swag bag, so we got the new Yeti coolers and a new Bailey & Wood hat here. Let's talk Pacers. They win their in-season tournament opener What'd you think of the city? I actually when I first saw the city edition uniforms, like just the picture of them online, I was like, and then I saw like Halliburton and Turner in it, and I'm like, okay, like these are pretty cool. The floor was a miss for me. It was just a little, I don't know if it's because we're in our 40s now, but
I was going to say it's because I'm a
old.
traditionalist.
Yeah.
So I don't like
the bright blue.
I don't like the change. I'm an old school, but you know what? We're probably not the target audience for that.
No, we're not. Yeah, I can say that definitively that we are not the target audience for that. But a 121-116 win over Cleveland, so they did win their first in-season tournament game. Next one is Tuesday against Philly, next Tuesday, of course. And the response seems strong so far. It seems like the players care. It seems like the fans are kind of into it. As sports fans, we're always so sarcastic and snarky about anything that's new and that's changed. But I don't know, maybe this in-season tournament might actually work.
I hated it when I first heard about it.
Me too.
I was like, I don't like this. I don't know how it's going to work. But you know what? To me, it's about the players. If the players are engaged and it's a good product, and I think that's the one thing the NBA struggles with. Or as a Pacers fan, going to games, it's the energy. It's not like college, right? It doesn't have that same energy,
atmosphere.
The atmosphere. And I think the Pacers fans, I will give Indiana a lot of credit. I think, being a basketball state, I do think for a team that hasn't accomplished, let's say, a whole lot and gone through some rough years, the support's been there. And I think that's pretty a testament to Pacer fans. But this team's exciting. I mean, this is a team that really has some exciting players. And it seems like the effort and the energy is at a higher level when I watched them.
Yeah. They play a fun style. Remember, like, the Pacers have had some bad teams where not only are they bad, they're not fun. And, recently we saw some of those with, like, no offense to, like, Domas Sabonis, who's a great player, but, that kind of that plodding half-court style of basketball, it wasn't fun to watch. The Jim O'Brien era with like, Tyler Hansbrough, like, that wasn't fun basketball. This is fun basketball to watch, even when they're struggling. But the defense still a concern. They did beat the Spurs on Monday night and hung $150 on them, but gave up 111 or whatever. They're 29th in the NBA in points allowed. So not a great statistic so far. I think that's going to be an ongoing struggle for them. But if they could get even mediocre defensively, offensively, I think they're in really good shape. And they've got some real scores.
Yeah, I think that, again, I think it's a brand of basketball that is going to bring in. And I would rather have the talent. I've always said this. I think I'd rather have the talent of being able to put the ball through the hoop and then work on the defense to be able to fill those pieces in.
Fair.
I feel like that's easier. Yeah. And I think, but I do agree with you 100%. I mean, you can't be giving up what they're giving up and expect to win over a long season.
Jazz on Wednesday nights. They got the Bucks on Thursday as they continue this homestand, and then they go to Philly for a road game and then an in-season tournament game Sunday and Tuesday for the Pacers coming up later this week. Time for our quick hits. Just a couple of things to hit on. And full disclosure, I would have brought this up even if you weren't here. But for those that don't know, Mike is a rabid Cubs fan, besides being a Dolphins fan. Cubs break the bank for Craig Counsell. So snatch him away from the division-winning Brewers. 5 years, $40 million. He's a South Bend native, Notre Dame grad, highest paid manager in all of baseball now.
You know what? I want to see them now put the money on the field. Yeah. So I think that's a great step. I think Cub fans as a whole, after you won the last one, you're wanting to hold on to, anything you have. And, watching the success of Schwarber and, Rizzo and so a few of those guys go, it's a little bittersweet. They outperformed what I think what most expectations last year were for them. But I'm interested to see if they're going to put that money on the field, because they're not. I think for most Cubs fans' frustrations, we're not a small market team. We don't want to act like one, and I think for whatever reason, this is a big move for them. Paying the money, okay, that's step one.
Yeah,
let's see what comes. So the skeptical Cubs fan in me, after the whole life of seeing what it was, but I think and I love Dave Ross for what he did, for the organization and playing and that part of it. But as a managerial, it was a move that I think is going to improve the team.
That was a very rough era for him to have to shepherd them through.
Oh, horrible.
So I'll give him credit for that, even though, there were obvious shortcomings, I think, for David Ross as a manager. And you can kind of wish him well here and say,
absolutely,
yeah, we got somebody else. But I think Texas winning it all and the path that they took is the best possible thing for baseball, because so many of these teams like Texas could have been like, hey guys, we just lost 100 and whatever games. We're not going to break the bank here. You got to be patient. Like, we're going to build this thing from the ground up. And Texas was like, no, man, we don't want to be here anymore. We don't want to lose 105 games. Here's a check. Here's a check. Here's a check. Here's a check. Let's get out of this right now. And they did. And then they won it.
Yep.
And this idea that you have to, I think there are some sports, certainly in college sports, this is the case. You have to build it back up. I think in most pro sports, rebuilds should be fairly quick. The NBA is probably the last major pro sport where you still need some franchise pieces to build around, and it's a little bit slower. But I think for the most part, in baseball, especially with the randomness of their playoffs, and certainly in the NFL, rebuilds should, be a 2-year, 3-year sort of process. I don't know. Maybe you disagree being a Dolphins fan, but I think
we're
for
going
most
long haul. We're going long haul.
Yeah, it should be that way. It shouldn't really take 7, 8, 9, 10 years to build something back up again.
I think baseball too is different because no salary cap.
Yeah.
So it's just the willingness if you want to go. Now you have the opposite end of that because no one spends more money than the Yankees.
Yeah.
And it isn't working.
No.
So I think that there's that fine line of you have to be smart with it, but if you want to go out and get that, and I think there's going to be a lot of names tied to the Cubs because it's popular, whether it's a trade for Alonso, Soto, or Ohtani sweepstakes, and I want them to get someone to show that it's committed because they need. I think the one thing about Chicago and the sports town of it is it's an icon city. The great teams, they always have that one guy. If you think about Cubs, the Bulls, the Bears, it's an icon sports city to where there's always that guy. The Cubs don't have that guy. They need to go get one. And I think that that's one of those things that then the manager can't be the guy. So who are you going to bring in? And I think that's, when they brought Rizzo in the first time, he wasn't that guy, but he grew into that guy. And then you see the people that the rally behind that. No different than when Tom Brady went to, Tampa Bay or whatever. I think that when you have the aura and you get the guy, then you can build around that. And I think that's, baseball is one of those kind of like what you said. I think it's easier done because you don't have the salary cap restrictions. It's just whether or not you want to spend the money.
Yeah. First step towards showing that they're serious, though, with this Craig Counsell deal for sure. Second quick hit. This may or may not be a good idea to bring up in front of Mike, considering his hat and his the section that he lives in. 13 straight sectionals now for Center Grove. 3-time defending state champion Trojans made it 13 straight with their win over Columbus North. They've won 17 overall. But Mike's Whiteland Fighting Warriors won their sectional for the second straight year, third time in 4 years. So good for them.
Hey, they got a young, exciting team. They're younger. They lost a lot last year. Center Grove's just a powerhouse. I mean, they're a machine. They've got a bunch of great group kids, and actually, I live right by their field, so I hear the cannons constantly when they're scoring. And Coach Moore has done an unbelievable job at Center Grove. There's just nothing else you can say there, but I'm unbelievably proud of Coach Fisher and what he's done at Whiteland, and now he's been in Indiana Hall of Fame and as a coach, and led them to their first state championship game. Fell 18 seconds short last year. It was rough, but he's done an unbelievable job, losing 30-something seniors this year, and they struggled a few games, but they've done an unbelievable job of bouncing back. So I'm proud of them.
Southside football, man. I mean, I was there early to mid 2000s, and really outside of Roncalli, Franklin Central had a couple of good teams. I think I remember, but. Eric Moore was still he had the 2000 team that was really good, but he was still kind of relatively new, and it was still very much, Warren, Ben Davis. Like it was the city schools and then the township schools. And now, I mean, you've got several programs down on the south side that are just really, really good. I mean, even Greenwood has had some success.
They did well. Indian Creek had a good season too.
A sectional and all of that. Final quick hit here. Some birds that are named after people, Cooper's hawk, Townsend's warbler. I've never heard of Bachman's sparrow, but apparently the American ornithological, whatever that word is, study of birds, right? That American Society, they're going to start renaming birds because some of these people that they're named after have bad pasts. Okay. So we've cleaned up the Confederate statues, and now we are cleaning up the bird names. That's what we're doing, I guess. So...
Yeah,
I felt like that was important to bring up as a resident bird hater. I hate, regardless of what, you can name any of these things. I hate birds, but thought that was worth bringing up on today's show. Bird renaming bid.
Interesting. You want to try it one more time? Say what it is?
I know it's ornithology, ornithological.
Close enough.
Ornithological.
To be honest with you, I wasn't going to even try. Okay. So You did well.
JD's just cringing in there. He's actually like a well-educated young man, and he's just cringing from behind the glass. We'll come back, wrap up the show next. We got Buy It or Bold Bleep to get to with Mike, and we will bid you adieu here on Query and Schultz, presented by Bailey Wood Financial Group on the ISC Sports Network.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Hey, AC.
Nice snap.
Mortgages and a snap. Duh.
Bailey and Wood, a lending hand for Wish TV Sports.
Back for a final time here on Bailey and Wood Presents Corey and Schultz, ISC Sports Network. Thanks to Mike Wood for making the trek up here from the south side to our studio to tape today, as Jake is still overseas. He will rejoin me next week. Before we get to Buy It or Bold Bleep, it's time for our IUPUI Jags report. Didn't want to forget about our Jaguars. You know what, Mike? The men, they were the first game of the 23-24 season yesterday. They tipped off at 10 a.m. against something called Spalding. No relation to
the basketball.
Right. They beat Spalding 70-63.
Coach Matt Crenshaw.
So a pretty cool atmosphere. 4,000 elementary school kids attended that game as part of the annual NCAA Readers Become Leaders Day. And then the women kicked off their season against EIU, against Eastern Illinois as well. So a good opener for the Jaguars, and great to see both teams back on it, back in action. State Fairgrounds Coliseum is always a great atmosphere, and so is the Jungle as well, as the women held off Eastern Illinois 77-72, so both of them winners yesterday. Men's soccer, the number 3 Jags eliminated Wright State 1-0 in Sunday's Horizon League tournament opener. Kenshiro Yamaguchi had the game winner for the Jags. They also had 6 players earn Horizon League postseason awards this past week, so congratulations to the men there. On the women's side, sadly, a very successful 2023 campaign unfortunately came to a close Thursday night. They were edged out in the semis of the Horizon tournament in Milwaukee. They closed the season at 11-3-5 after losing in PKs to NKU. Volleyball split road matches at Robert Morris and Youngstown State last week. They visit Oakland Tuesday, round out the season at home Friday and Saturday. And then swimming and diving fell to Ball State during Friday night's dual meets. You can check out all of the info on IUPUI Jags Athletics, IUPUIJags.com. And single game tickets now on sale for men's hoops, women's hoops, anything else that you want to see at IUPUI and through Ticketmaster, IUPUIJags.com/tickets. And thanks to them for being tremendous sponsors of our show here during the fall season. Let's get to Buy It or Bold Bleep. It's brought to you by our friends at Chateau Kitchens. Chateau Kitchens can tackle any interior project in your home, whether it be a bathroom, a basement, a kitchen. They've done all 3 of those things for us. They did our guest bathroom, they did our basement, and they did our kitchen, and they did amazing work. ChateauKitchens.com, at Chateau Kitchens on Instagram and Facebook for before and after pictures. So we'll kind of rehash some of the topics that we got on this show and then just get your hard takes on this, Mike. You ready?
All right.
Bryce Young will end up as the worst of the top 4 quarterbacks taken in this year's draft. Buy It or Bold Bleep?
I'm going to say Bull on that one. I think he's better than Will Levis.
Yeah, top 3 with where we sit today, I'd say yes.
But I think it's close. I think it's closer to being by. If between I think he's closer to the bottom than he is the top.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I think there's a much better chance that Young ends up 4 out of 4 than 1 out of 4.
Correct.
So I'll also say Bold Bleep because I'm not ready. I mean, what have we even really seen from it? Has Levis thrown 100 passes yet? Even
Not yet,
right?
yeah.
So I mean, we're talking about little tiny samples here. How about this one? The statement 2: the Colts will finish with a winning record, but will not make the AFC playoffs. Buy It or Bold Bleep? So they would have to go. They'd have to go 5-3 the rest of the way.
It's possible. Man, that is a tough one. I'm gonna say, I got him at 8 wins. I got him at 8-9.
Yeah, I had him at 7-10 to start the season, so I was actually a little, I didn't think they were going to be a bad team. If I had to pick it today, I'd also say 8-9. So this is making for a bad Buy It or Bold Bleep segment because we keep agreeing on everything. But yes, I'll say Bold Bleep as well. I think they're going to end up. I think they'll split, right? 4-4.
Yeah.
I think they'll go 4-4 the rest of the way in the final 8 games of the season. And then finally, the in-season tournament will be a huge success for the NBA.
Yeah, I definitely think bull on that one. I just don't get it. I'm not a fan of it. Maybe, but then again, I don't think it was brought. Kind of we talked about earlier. I don't think it was brought for my that part of it.
I agree.
I'm not a fan.
I agree that it wasn't brought for us, but you know what? Smashing success. It's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened in the league. There we go.
I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Maybe I'm embellishing just a little bit. Maybe I'm embellishing. I buy it 100%. Thanks to our great sponsors. Mike, thanks for everything that you do for the show. Appreciate you as a sponsor, but of course appreciate you as a friend as well. Thanks to our friends at Chateau Kitchens, IUPUI Athletics, Hoagies and Hops, Chili Water Brewing, and of course Love Heating and Cooling. For Vince, for JD, Rake's not even here, but for Rake as well. He's Mike. I'm Derek. Jake returns next week. We will see you next time here on Query and Schultz, ISC Sports Network.
IUPUI basketball is back. Come witness history with head coach Matt Crenshaw inside Indiana Farmers Coliseum and head coach Kate Bruce inside the Jungle as they usher in a new era of Jaguars athletics. Be there for exciting Horizon League and in-state matchups. Affordable fun for the whole family. Full season tickets are now on sale starting as low as $80. Order today at IUPUIJags.com/tickets or call 317-278-2530. Work hard, make noise, have fun. Go Jags.
At Bailey & Wood, we pride ourselves on our 5-star customer service. But at our core, we're a family. Family owned, and family to our customers, staff, and our community. From charity events to recognizing hometown heroes, we prioritize giving back to our communities that have always supported our growth. So let us help you get your dream home today.